goes to show that, corruption is everywhere. You look left or right, it's always going to be there. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Let's see what happened, see what they committed.
I heard the shots. I never saw a kid before, man.
This is Joseph Mijanowski. Mijanowski is considered the most corrupt cop in Chicago. Although he had a long and seemingly illustrious career as a police officer in Chicago, he was not what he seemed. Underneath the badge and uniform, he was a corrupt cop who used his position of power to line his pockets and those of his accomplices. Wait till you hear the crimes this officer was committing. Throughout his 22-year career, Mijanowski worked with gang members to run a cocaine sales ring. He was able to do this because of his extensive knowledge of the gang underworld and his street informants, whom he used to shake down drug dealers and sell drugs. He was not alone in his corruption, as other police officers in Chicago were also involved in criminal activities at that time.
Whatever caused him to turn to the dark side was now more important than the police department, was more important than his job. But he used the job to further whatever it is that he was doing in his criminal life.
Surprising.
What probably happened was he probably tried it one time, realized how much money he could make, and then got hooked on it. And because he a police officer, nobody even questioned it.
He had almost 60 citations for bravery and high-profile arrests. He was generally praised for busting drugs and weapons gangs.
What they would do is they would sell cocaine to somebody, and Padilla would get paid. And then Mijanowski, his partner, would pull over the guys who just left with the cocaine.
In 2001, Mijanowski's crimes caught up with him, and he was arrested and sent to trial. His family was present in the courtroom, and the judge expressed sympathy for them while condemning Mijanowski's actions. Blanche Manning, U.S. District Judge, informed him that he had violated society by trafficking drugs and arming members of street gangs who were part of his crack cocaine distribution operation on the streets he had sworn to protect. Brian Nettles, the lead prosecutor in the case, described Mijanowski as an outlaw cop who betrayed the true heroes in law enforcement. These honest officers daily put their lives on the line. Nettles detailed his crimes, which included exposing undercover police officers' identities to gang members, safeguarding criminal organizations, trafficking crack cocaine, and providing street gangs with ammunition. How did the judge handle such a devilish officer? Mijanowski was found guilty of drug conspiracy and racketeering and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Another rogue officer who got what he deserved for harming the citizens he was supposed to protect was David Carrick. This is David Carrick. Carrick was born to a Royal Artillery soldier and cleaner in Wiltshire, England. His parents divorced when he was still young. Regardless, he still managed to work in the British Army for a short time. In 2001, he became a police officer. Before 2010, he was a member of the Armed Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Team. Carrick might have worn a badge, but wait till you hear about what the man under the badge was doing behind closed doors. In 2002, the MET police received many petitions of domestic abuse against him. Still, despite the numerous complaints about his conduct, he was recertified as an armed police officer in 2017. Because of his cruel nature, his co-workers dubbed him Bastard Dave. Carrick met several women on dating apps like Badoo and Tinder between 2003 and 2020. He gained their trust by using his position as an armed police officer and established abusive relationships with them. He abused his victims with a belt.
And you know what's so crazy? I wonder how many people who are in position of power are getting away with stuff like this. Because think about it, a lot of the stuff that's happening, nobody's batting an eye to them just because they have a badge. So just imagine the amount of police officers or political people right now walking around scot-free. That's crazy. He was doing this from 2003 to 2020. I feel bad for the woman.
Locked them in small spaces, urinated on them, and sexually assaulted them.
These women are not weak or ineffectual. They were victims of your criminal mindset. The malign influence of men like you in positions of power stands in the way of a revolution of women's dignity.
Sometimes he dictated what they wore, ate, and even where they slept. He even forbade some of them from eating at all.
What?
A year later, another woman reported him for date rape. Carrick was detained and suspended from police work until October 2021. But how did the courtroom handle Carrick's case? At first, he pleaded not guilty to all charges, but in December 2022, he pleaded guilty to 49, including 24 counts of rape. The charges involve 12 female victims. The mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, and the Crown Prosecution Service's chief prosecutor both expressed disgust and outrage at Carrick's actions.
He's a man who relentlessly degraded, belittled, sexually assaulted, and raped women. As time went on, the severity of his offending intensified as he became emboldened, thinking he would get away with it.
Carrick's trial began in February 2023. He was found guilty and sentenced to 36 life sentences, with a minimum term of 30 years plus 239 days on February 7th, 2023.
This makes a total of 36 life sentences.
He ain't never getting out.
The minimum term you will have to serve before the parole board can think of releasing you is 30 years, 239 days.
This means he must serve 30 years in prison before being eligible for parole. If you thought that was crazy, wait till you see a murderous cop whose crime seems pale in the face of other rogue cops.
And I'm going to tell you something. At the same time, if that was just a regular person, they would have already been in jail. But the fact that these are people of power, people who protect and serve and stuff like that, they got to go through so many loops. And a lot of the time, these people don't get caught. That's just, think about it, 2003 to 2020. And he was being constantly reported on, sexual harassment and stuff like that. And it took that long for it to catch up to him. Wow.
This is Wayne Couzens. Couzens is a 48-year-old Metropolitan Police officer who perpetrated a horrible crime that shocked the United Kingdom on the evening of March 3rd, 2021. He abducted, sexually assaulted, and murdered Sarah Everard, a 33-year-old marketing executive, heading home from a friend's apartment near Clapham Common in South London. Couzens, who was not on duty at the time, pulled over next to Everard and introduced himself as a police officer before handcuffing her and throwing her in his car. He then took her to a pond near Dover, where he violated, killed her, burned her body, and dumped her bones.
So we're here to talk to you about Sarah. Show the picture. Do you know Sarah?
I don't know.
Okay.
So you must have something to say that I know.
Well, as I said, you've been arrested on suspicion of kidnap. And we believe that you've been involved in her disappearance and taking her away from her.
Are you sick of having issues with your webinars, wasting tons of time on troubleshooting with attendees? If
Okay.
Now, we believe that you know something about where she is, and that's why we're here to look for her and to try and find her. And that's why we're talking to you now, is to try and get you to have a good think about it. And, as anything you can about whether or not it's fine.
Financial.
Red flag.
And I've been lent on by, I don't know who they are. They're a group, a gang, whatever.
It even sound like he making it up as he's going. You can tell he's like making it up. Like the stuttering, it's just, you can tell he guilty.
And they told me, well, I need to go and pick up girls and give them to them. So I said, what's happening? And it then came through that they're going to harm my family, take them away, and they'll use them instead. But at that point, I had no option to try and find somebody. So I don't, there's just a couple of names. I was told the place to take her. That's it. That is all I know. I just parked my car up, and then the van come up behind me, flashed me. They all jumped out, and then they took this girl. They said, you've done good.
The former officer of the Civil Nuclear Constabulary was detained on suspicion of kidnapping and then charged with her kidnapping and murder after Everard's corpse was discovered in woodland near Ashford, Kent, on March 10th. Couzens joined the Metropolitan Police from the Civil Nuclear Constabulary in September 2018 and was posted to the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Section, which oversees the uniformed protection of government and diplomatic facilities. He had not, however, undertaken increased vetting as part of his recruiting, nor had he fulfilled the Met's statutory 2-year probationary period before joining the PADP. Couzens pled guilty to Everard's kidnapping and sexual assault on June 8, 2021, and took responsibility for her murder. He pleaded guilty to her murder on July 9th. On September 30th, 2021, he was sentenced to life in prison. Although he tried to appeal, it was unsuccessful.
On the 9th of February 2022, he was sentenced to imprisonment for life with a whole life order. Stewart seeks leave to appeal against sentence. The circumstances of his case.
Comment below, but can y'all tell me why do they wear like the little wigs and stuff like that? Like, I'm just curious for anybody that lives, in the UK and stuff like that. Why do they wear that? I just don't see the purpose of it, but maybe y'all do.
Do not fall within the terms of the statutory provision which provides that a whole life order should be the normal starting point, subject to possible adjustment for the individual facts. It is not one of those rare cases where nonetheless a whole life order should be imposed. We grant leave to appeal and substitute a minimum term of 35 years.
While Couzens acted alone, wait till you see how this group of cops formed a gang to execute their crimes together. We take you to Baltimore, US, where not 1, not 2, not even 4, but 8 gun trace task force officers are in court for deceit, lying, and stealing from the citizens they were supposed to protect. Their behavior led to an investigation that involved the FBI. According to the federal indictment, the 8 police officers engaged in illicit actions. They stole money from victims they wrongfully detained, lied to investigators, falsified police reports, and claimed overtime for work they didn't do. The officers were charged with conspiracy to distribute drugs and racketeering. The gun trace task force was established to minimize violent crime by tracking and removing illegal firearms from the streets. The cops assigned to this task team, on the other hand, were accused of perpetrating heinous robberies on innocent civilians and orchestrating cover-ups to evade detection by their superiors.
Are we surprised by the findings of this report?
The indictment includes several criminal acts undertaken by the police, including stopping a guy on the street.
I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't see the point in messing up a good career, putting my life on the line or putting my life in jeopardy to where I could lose it all and be sent behind bars, my freedom, everything's gone. I don't see what would make a person be like, you know what, I'm going to go against my morals and, do things that I know is wrong, or I swore to protect against. I don't get the point of that.
Searching his car without a warrant, transporting him home, and stealing $1,500 from him while working as a maintenance supervisor at a nursing facility. After that, one of the police allegedly produced a bogus incident report, omitting the stolen money, and another approved it. In another case, 5 officers stopped a man exiting a storage facility, pretended to have a search warrant, and then grabbed $2,000 from a $4,800 sock. Supervisor Wayne Jenkins, Evodio Hendricks, Maurice Ward, Daniel Hersel, Thomas Ellers, Marcus Taylor, Momodu Gondo, and Jamel Rayam were the officers involved. They were all convicted and received a sentence varying from 7 to 25 years. Like the gun trace task force officers showed, police officers can commit horrible acts themselves. Wait till you see the severity of crimes that Officer Derek Stafford committed. This is Derek Stafford, the third.
Have you shopped all your options? Get 2 years, 200,000 miles of coverage, a 3-day money-back.
33-year-old ex-deputy marshal killed 6-year-old Jeremy Martis at a traffic stop on November 3rd, 2015, while his father was driving. The shooting occurred after Stafford and a colleague engaged Chris Few, Jeremy's father, in a car chase after he failed to pull over when Stafford and his colleague indicated that he should pull over. When Stafford finally caught up with Few after a 2-mile chase, he shot into the vehicle 14 times, even though footage showed that Few had his hands up. During the trial, Stafford apologized to Jeremy's father and said that if he had known a child was in the vehicle, he would not have fired into the car. Stafford was found guilty of manslaughter and attempted manslaughter and faced a required minimum of 20 years and a maximum of 60 years in jail. He was eventually sentenced to 40 years in jail on Friday, March 31st, 2017. Once the punishment was announced, emotions ran high outside the courthouse. Some believed justice was served, while others believed the penalty was unjust. Bertha Walker Andrews, Stafford's aunt, came out against the verdict, calling it modern-day slavery.
What?
She was also enraged by those who prosecuted her nephew, claiming that a black man has no right to kill a white guy. Connie Ganyard, a local member of a group called Justice for Jeremy, believes the case was about facts rather than race. Given the circumstances of the shooting, Ganyard believes the punishment was appropriate. John Sinkfield, the lead prosecutor, believes the judge's judgment was more than just. Meanwhile, Stafford's attorneys, while disappointed with the outcome, remain optimistic and confident that their client will be released one day. While Stafford's case may be said to be an honest mistake, we certainly cannot say the same for Officer Roy Oliver. And wait till you hear this corrupt cop's story.
Were you trying to seriously injure or kill the driver of that car?
I was trying to stop the threat inside the vehicle, correct.
This is Roy Oliver. Roy Oliver had worked for the Balch Springs Police Department for 6 years before he shot and murdered 15-year-old Jordan Edwards in a senseless shooting. The teenager was unarmed and was in the passenger seat of a departing car when the officer opened fire. Oliver was placed on administrative leave following the incident and fired on May 2nd, 2017. Following the shooting, the Dallas County Sheriff's Department and the Dallas County District Attorney's Office investigated it. Oliver was charged with murder on May 5th, 2017, and an arrest warrant was issued. Later that day, he handed himself in and was released after posting $300,000 in bail. Oliver's murder trial was delayed twice before starting on August 20th, 2018. On August 28th, he was convicted of Jordan's murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison the following day. His attorneys announced that they aimed to challenge both the sentence and the guilty verdicts. The Texas Fifth Court of Appeals denied Oliver's appeal on August 10th, 2020, upholding his murder conviction and sentence. If you thought these cases were crazy, just watch what happens when parents come.
Just because they got a badge, that don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing at all. And these are just the people who are caught. Like I said earlier, you know, there are plenty of people out there who are in positions of power right now who have done some cruel things, walking around, smiling, joking like everything is